Welcome back to episode 134 of the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast. My name is Josh. As always, I'm here with Troy, and we're also here with Neil, otherwise known as Irish Flyers Collector, coming to you live from our beautiful Airbnb somewhere near the city of Toronto. I don't even know what city we're in. You never even know where you are anymore when it comes to things like Google Maps, I guess, that we use these days. But yeah, we're at the Sport Card Expo. It's Sunday morning, so technically still going on today, or the show is still going on today. And we're this is our well, I guess we do this episode twice a year, Troy, where it's really off the cuff. It's just our reactions and to the weekend that was the Sport Card Expo. So if you're looking for, I guess, hockey card stats updates, not going to get it today, but we'll be back at it on Thursday. And going to say a special hello to our good friend Neil, Irish Flyers Collector, in a minute. But just wanted to say that we're really excited to have you, Neil, on this show in particular because this is your first Toronto Sport Card Expo, and I think Troy and I both remember very vividly our first time and kind of how it changed our perspective on collecting. And so I got a whole bunch of questions for you, Neil, and I kind of want to start there, kind of getting your instant reactions as a first timer to the Sport Card Expo. So before we do that, though, hello, welcome back to the show.
Great. Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's been a fun weekend.
Yeah, and we're
Very
all
fun.
probably sound a little grovelly, right? Because
Yeah,
we've been talking a lot for the last few days. Okay, so Neil, now
yeah,
we mentioned this is your first time at the show.
yeah.
Um, what was it? Just give me the sort of, I don't know, 30-second overview of kind of what the show's been like for you and how it
Mhm.
compared to maybe what you expected it was going to be like.
I'm not sure. So I've been to the National twice, and so I've had a show, a large show experience, versus like, and I've been to some local shows. So I kind of had an idea what to expect size wise. So that wasn't too terribly shocking. But I think as much as I tried to mentally prepare for the amount of hockey cards that I was about to see and memorabilia, um, I've seen the videos, but I don't think I was quite fully prepared for, you hear how much hockey is here and you hear about it, but that is what just blew me away, seeing so much stuff. It was kind of like we're in the upside down of shows. If you look at it,
Yeah.
like, normally I go to a show and it's like there's, half a dozen tables, maybe a dozen tables if you're at the National of Hockey, and you can kind of wrap up your experience pretty quick. But I think we walked down the first row on the first day, Josh, and what we got maybe three-quarters of the way down the row before we first saw our first non-hockey card
Yeah.
table. Um, and so that was really exciting, and so it exceeded my expectations right out of the gate. And then I started to have, after the first hour or two of shock kind of wore off, I started to have a better appreciation for the amount of vintage or the amount of cards that I have never seen. That's what really was cool. Like being able to pick up ask a dealer to see a Parky, Gordie Howe cold card, um, Art Ross cards, George Vezina cards. So that was definitely a new take that I started to have an appreciation for.
You're in Philadelphia and we're in the Twin Cities. And I think as we've kind of compared our more local experiences,
Mhm.
and I would assume that this is, they're both really good hockey markets in
Yeah,
both
yeah,
Minnesota and in Pennsylvania. And we've had very similar experiences where you go to a show locally and you're just hoping that there's going to be a few good tables of hockey. I think we have really low expectations at,
yep,
at this point. And then you come here, and I think you hit on this very nicely. It's not just the quantity of hockey cards, it's the quality of hockey cards that you see. Because what Troy and I talk about all the time back in Minnesota is, yeah, we'll have those couple tables of hockey, but it's kind of what I would maybe term as vanilla hockey, where base young guns, which are fine and we all like too. It just gets a little repetitive over
Mhm.
time, where here it's anything and everything you could ever imagine from a hockey card perspective. You'll see cards you've never seen before. You'll see in the States, we don't get to see, like you mentioned, Neil, a lot of these real old vintage cards like the 1951 Parker set or pre-war cards, the 1911 C56 or the C55 set, the 30s OBG sets. It's just really incredible. Troy and I both felt after our first time at the expo, a word I think we both used quite a bit was overwhelmed. Did you feel overwhelmed at all on the first day?
Yeah, a little bit. I'll be honest. Yeah, a little bit. Just there was so much to take in. Trying to figure out how I was going to accomplish so much. Some of the stuff I was looking for personally was okay. It might not be easy to find. It's not a nice chunky patch. It's not some of the cards, but I knew I was gonna. I had my checklist that I was going for. So, but I actually kind of got excited over some of the search that I had in coming for me. We've all been to the local shows, and I mentioned to you guys about seeing the corner spot where the guys just have these old timers have all these old binders of cards, and they have all the chairs on the end, and it's the dollar boxes filled with cards where you can go and pick up sets. And I've always was envious. It's always usually baseball, right? And I've always been jealous of those guys that are going through looking for, digging for those checklist items that they're looking for. So um, there was plenty of opportunity for that for hockey here, and I enjoyed that experience. So that kind of I did that early on the first day for a moment to kind of calm myself down a little bit, get some sit time, um, and just kind of enjoy what I was looking for.
Now you came to the show with a very specific goal, and so what was that goal?
I was looking to get my O-Pee-Chee 79 O-Pee-Chee Gretzky rookie card.
Okay, and you already have a Gretzky, but you had a tops version, right?
I have a tops version, yeah. So getting that O-Pee-Chee, my goal was to accomplish was to get every one of his manufactured cards from the 1980s, from his rookie year up to 1990, actually. So, and that
Well,
was the
to your
last
credit,
one.
you were digging in right away. Within probably 15 minutes of us showing up, you were looking at various Gretzky rookies. So, and I've said before too that the Gretzky rookie is almost like a hobby in of itself. It's such a intricate card. There's a
Mhm,
lot of them, which is good, right? Because
mhm.
it's the most iconic hockey card. So, how did the show meet your expectations in that regard? Did you find, because you were looking for a very specific grade, which you can talk about, but did you find the variety you were hoping for to have the amount of choices that you wanted?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a ton of variety up here. It was great seeing that so many. It allowed me to be more selective. You know, usually if you go to a different show, it's you have a limited variety, like you said. But here there was everything from raw, ton of them, all the way up to the highest I think we saw was an 8. So and everything was in between, and it was like every few tables had one. So and it was both cards, tops and OPG. So allowed me to be selective. And be able to go from table to table to shop around, to look at them, find the different nuances of things that I liked. I'm pretty selective after studying the card for, you know, so long since I've been back, and even as a kid. So, but I learned so much more from you guys and from Jeremy Lee. So I've become a very selective purchaser, acquirer. So that was definitely gave me the confidence to come here and look for what I wanted.
And you got it right.
Yes, sir. I did on the first day.
It's a 3.5, 3.5 PSA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 3.5. Yeah.
It's really
3.5.
nice. You got a good one too. I think that's a benefit of being here and having that amount of variety is you get so much to choose from. I don't know if we cover it as much on this show, but when uh, I'm on Jeremy's show and we're reviewing, there's always Gretzky rookies in the PWCC weekly YouTube show we do.
Mhm.
And probably the biggest thing that stood out to me over the past 6 months or so of doing that show is just the oceans wide level of difference there is can be between a PSA 3 Gretzky and a PSA 4. You can
Mhm.
find especially when you're looking at it from that eye appeal perspective, you can find some that are don't look very good. And
Mhm,
you almost scratch your head and you're like, wow, how is this a 3? This
mhm.
looks like a like it should be graded maybe lower than that. And then you'll find some threes where you're scratching your head for the other reason. You're like, I can't believe this isn't a 5.
Yeah,
And I think when you're buying, especially vintage, it behooves you to be a little bit of patience, to do a lot more research, and to really understand that you can't just buy the number on the slab if you're looking for a graded one. And even if you can't come to the Sport Card Expo and see a bunch of these in person, which I think definitely helps, what you can do is go online and look at comps, not just from the dollar perspective, but from the quality perspective, so that you get a very real good understanding of what am I looking for in a PSA 3 or what am I looking for in a PSA 4? Because any of these sort of grail cards that are lower graded are going to have defects. You're a grade 3 or a grade 4 for a reason.
yep.
And so it's almost a game of trade-offs in my mind as far as what can I really want one that's centered and I'm okay if the corners might be a little bit fuzzy. I can live with that, but I can't live with one that's like horribly centered or whatever trade-off is important to you. So it sounds like that you were able to, Neil, go and because how many do you think you looked at before you settled on the one that you ultimately pulled the trigger on?
No, I know I saw more than what I real true genuine considerable ones like within my wheelhouse of the 3 4. I probably looked at maybe 2 to 3 dozen that quickly in the first day. I saw a lot more which were higher grades or raw that I didn't, that were just not under in consideration. So yeah, probably at least a good solid 2 dozen were in play. Ones I was like, well, do I reach for this one a little bit, or do I compromise and go for lower than what I was hoping for? But yeah, I was looking for primarily, like I said, like we talked about, is the centering was important to me. It's not centered perfectly top to bottom, but because it is a 3.5 for a reason, and corners have a um, little wear, but not a lot. But it just and the Oilers logo was important to me as well, making sure that that was not off centered in that little circle box, that circle area. The oil drop was nicely placed. So I'm happy with it. I think it's better than 3.5, but that's why I got it.
It
So
was a big pickup for you on the first day. Okay, now Neil and I showed up to the show on Thursday, which I think is technically the preview day. Troy wasn't there, but we're gonna get into that whole thing in a minute because Troy, I don't know how you did your first day at the expo, and that's a whole story in of itself. But kind of want to go in chronological order here. So Thursday night is the preview day at the show. I think the show is open from 4 to 8 p.m. And that's where I think after the VIP pass, is that right, Neil? Okay. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, the
yeah.
VIP pass.
And it allows you to get maybe a little bit of early access, a first peek at some of the cards, which I think was very helpful, probably in your effort to get your OPG Gretzky rookie. Now, what I've heard though is that because the dealers, of course, are there much earlier in the day, I think right away in the morning, and they set up, and there's a whole lot of wheeling and dealing that I think happens from dealer to dealer before all of that really goes down. But it's a there's less people at the show, so it's kind of nice if you can do that, and if you are able to get into town early enough if you come, or if you're from the Greater Toronto area, if you're able to get off work a little bit early, I would definitely recommend coming on Thursday night. So we were able to walk around, meet people, look at cards. I got kind of my uh, I did buy it on Thursday night. So as anyone knows, I've been probably insufferably pining over my Glow Peachy infatuation over the past few months. And I went over to say hi to Jeremy Lee at his booth. It's always in the same spot. I think he's been there probably 20 years, I'm sure, or something like that. And I knew he had a number of Glow Peachies. I didn't know he would be selling them. And he had, I think, at his table an Ovechkin in a tag slab, a McDavid in a take slab, and then the Gretzky in a PSA, and the Gretzky was a PSA 8. Now I have probably the first one that I wanted was the Gretzky because I like the fact he's in the Kings uniform. I'm sure we'll show the card later, and just kind of fits to me the motif of the card. Now it's a PSA 8, like I said. I'll admit I'm a little bit of a 10 snob, and I'd forgotten like how rare these cards are and how few there are out there. And so I kind of wrote it off like, oh man, it's a little bit off centered. But I know all like most. I don't know if I've really ever seen one that is centered. And I'm like, I'll skip it and I'll just kind of leave it there for a minute. I'll try to find another one. Well, I do a real quick cursory walk all around the show, and we'll get into the whole layout later too and how much bigger it was this year. I think I saw like a Seth Jones, really didn't see anything else. And then it got reminded me to go back and look at like sales and pop count and going to Card Ladder. There's only two sales ever of a Gretzky Glow Peachy from 2016 OPG. And then I'm thinking, well, did Carletter miss something? So then I go into Terapeak and try to do that through my phone, and nope, there's only those two sales in there. Go and I look up the cert number on the one Jeremy had. I think it's the only one that's graded, and so it just was a good reminder that okay, this card is pretty rare, and this is the only graded one, the highest graded one, of course. I guess eBay 101, right? And I'm like, so I just decided to pull the trigger on that one. So we both got kind of our key target on day one, Neil. So I think that's pretty cool. And like I said, I just if you can swing it, I would really recommend going on Thursday because you get and we'll get into how like crazy yesterday Saturday was and how many people there were at the show. But before we get into Troy's adventure, which is incredible. We do have to talk about the one I think kind of bummer. Big, you were able to catch up to everything on the at the show, Troy, by missing Thursday, but you did miss Jeremy Lee's kind of I guess networking event that he throws on Thursday night at a restaurant bar called Jack Astor's, which is pretty close, maybe a 10-minute drive or something like that from the show. We went last year. Troy, did we go both times or just in the spring?
I think just in the spring. I think we didn't get to the Fall Expo last time until Friday.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so this was our second time there, and he gets a pretty big room at this place. It's an amazing thing he does for the hobby. He just does it to get people together, to get people to network and to socialize. It's one of the many altruistic things, I guess, that Jeremy does for the hobby. He does so much that really personally, and so I think that that's one of the reasons why he is such a good just person and a good uh, advocate for the hobby and really tries to bring people together. And it was packed. It was packed. I think I asked him the next day, and he said there were 120 people that were there, and it got me kind of thinking too. Man, if this keeps growing, that I wonder if he'll need a different venue at some point with just so many people there. It was even a little hard to move around, and I think at one point I asked Jeremy about the origin of this networking event, and I want to say and I might be a little bit wrong, so I'm sorry, Jeremy, if I'm off on the details, but that he maybe started it 11 or so years ago, so he's been doing it for a while. And like most things that start or new, probably a little bit humble beginnings, maybe a table full of people, and to see kind of now what it's mushrooming into is really incredible. But what did you think of the whole Jack Astor's kind of networking event that was on Thursday night, Neil? Did that live up to the billing for you?
Oh, absolutely. I remember, yeah, seeing his post and your post about it last year. And I remember sitting at home and dealing with my small bout of FOMO and saying to myself, like, I'm going to be sitting in that room next year. The next show, I'm going to be sitting in that room because it was just so nice to talk to people. Um, met many fellow Discord members from the Gong Show and just people in general in the hobby. It was so fun to be there. Just surrounded by people of similar interests and asking about what did you get? What are you here for? They ask me, what did I get? What am I, so it's a really fun event just to socialize with some people after the show versus because at the show it's kind of business, you have something to go and do and you stop and talk to people there. But this is just kind of like where we let our hair down and hang out and um, yeah, it really lived up to my expectations 100%. I was so glad to be there.
I think what I'm really starting to learn about this hobby is that it, in my mind, it's just as much, if not more, about the people than the cards. It's like the cards are the common bond, the thing that we're all interested in that gives us that commonality to get together. And what Jeremy is doing and has done through this event is bring people together and kind of cultivate those connections and those relationships with people. I'm such a huge fan of this show and this experience and coming to Toronto. I think I made the point to you last night, Neil, where I said I literally could come here and not get a single card and have the best time. It's just so much of, I think, about kind of the people we've been able to meet. And when you do that, and I'm not like I've always kind of had the mentality just where it's like I never felt like I needed like a ton of friends or I needed to like know a million people. It's like I've got I'm very close to my brother. I've got great friends from my hometown of college. I've got Troy. Who needs more friends when you have Troy? I mean, let's be honest. He's like the best that there is. I've got now Neil, right? And so it just naturally it doesn't. I'm maybe a little more introverted in that regard, but what I've learned, especially through the past year, and what maybe a byproduct of us doing this show and just naturally reaching so many people in that regard, is that how much the people aspect of this hobby makes it better. I don't know, Troy, has your experience been, because I think we're kind of we don't naturally like seek attention in that regard.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. I'll go back to what you said about the show. I I mean, I almost have walked around and not really bought a lot. I bought a couple boxes of wax, but it's just like I could spend and be happy just looking at tables, staring at them, moving on, talking to people. You might get in this. We've met way more people than I ever imagined we would that have come up and said hi, and we've talked to and chatted. And I could do that all day, talk about the show, talk about hockey cards. So yeah, it's one of those experiences where I really don't have to spend money to have a good time. I can just walk around and look at all the great stuff that is here.
We need to get into your day one adventures, and so we'll start by maybe you explaining well why you weren't here on Thursday at the start of the show, and that'll lead us into
Yeah.
you pulling something off that literally would have killed me and or made me so angry I would have not left the house for a year. But so okay, where were you on Thursday night?
Yeah, so Thursday night I had our first high school hockey game of the season. So I did not want to miss that. It was our season opener, home opener, all that fun stuff at Minnetonka. We won 8-zip. Great. I'm happy. I have a flight that leaves. So Friday morning is when I'm going to land or go to Toronto. The flight boarded at 6 a.m. We got done with the game. I probably got out of there around 10 p.m. Got home, it was 10:35, 10:45, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Well, I gotta do some work on the game, do a little editing on video." And then I'm like, "Well, then I gotta get to the airport probably because 'cause I'm one of those people that gets there early, it's just what I do. I've tried to be a guy that can get there a half hour before my flight, and I just can't. I just panic, I get nervous. So I ended up getting there, a couple I was last minute, so if I boards at 6, I wanna get there around I was thinking like 2:30 or no, sorry, 3:30, somewhere in there, AM or but then I'm like, well, no, I gotta get there a little earlier. So I'm like, I'll try to get there around 3 a.m. So that means I gotta leave my house around 2 a.m. because I work for an airline. So I'm able to go park in an employee lot, but we have to take a shuttle bus over, bunch of stuff like that. But then after all that decision making in my head, I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna go to bed. I gotta stay up all night because if I go to bed, I'm worried I'm just gonna sleep right through my alarm and I'm gonna miss the flight. So I just made that decision. I decided to stay up and I did it. I got to the airport. And again, I'm flying standby, so there's always that little nervousness too that the flight will get full or you won't make it. And I made it, jumped on, got to we landed Toronto, and I didn't fall asleep on the plane. I tried. I like tried to lean up against the window, and I just couldn't do it. I'm not a plane sleeper. And then we land, and we kind of I don't know what you go driving around the tarmac, and we get to like the gate area where we're supposed to go, and we stop and we sit and we wait. And it ended up being a 50-minute wait on the tarmac because they did not have any, I don't know what you call them, gate agents or gate or ramp workers that could move the ramp to the plane. So we sat there forever. Finally got off the plane after 50 minutes of waiting. Now I'm like really I'm starting on the struggle bus. I'm like this was a huge mistake. I get a get a lift or I go to order a lift to just go right to the show because I know you guys are going to be on there. I don't know what time it was when I got out of the airport and all that stuff, but the show was open, so I knew that. I order a lift, and my first lift, of course, it says they're on their way, and the car doesn't even move. I can just see on the app. It's like I'm like I can't deal with this. I'm gonna sit here. I sat there for 10 minutes watching this thing. Finally canceled that ride. Got a new one. Showed up at the show, and and then started my adventure. So that was basically me getting to the show.
Yeah, you looked okay when you got there, and
Yeah.
we went around the whole show on Friday, but man, by the time 6 o'clock rolls around and there's still 2 hours left, no,
Yeah.
you didn't even look tired. You looked like you were either drugged by somebody or you had all the beers at the expo, and you were kind of zombie like. And I remember, I don't know if you had this thought, Neil, but I remember thinking there because we had plans that night, like to go out to dinner, and like it was not going to be an early night on Friday, and you haven't slept in days, and I'm like this is not. I was almost convinced. I would have bet money that you were going to tap out at some point. So, what about you, Neil? As you saw Troy in his zombie, no sleep or sleep deprived state, did you think he was going to be able to power through?
I was worried. I was hoping that the just the getting to the show was gonna lift the spirits up and you get that second wind. But I wasn't sure. Once we got out of the show, I was like, all right, it's gonna be Josh and Neil carrying Troy sleeping.
Well, we were walking the car, and I remember just like wobbling. Like I don't know what I was doing. I was just like wobbling because I was so like incoherent of what was going on, and I'm just babbling about whatever I think thought came into my head. But I pulled it through. I made
Oh
it through. I
yeah.
got my second, third, fourth wind, and made it through the night.
Dinner, and you had a couple of barley-based beverages, I guess, and
Yep.
and you did perk right up. It was kind of amazing. I think it would have put me completely out and comatose. I can't do it without sleep, so I have no idea, but it was very impressive, Troy, and it'll go
That's
down in the your folklore at the show. I would
yeah.
imagine, though, it's not what you would recommend doing, that actually
No,
sleeping before you go to the expo might be
no.
part of a good plan.
Yes. Get a good night's rest before you go. I totally did not do that, and I paid for it, but and again, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I could do that in college and get away with it. But the next morning, when you guys like knocked on the door and said, "Okay," I mean, I think if no one would have said a word to me, I probably would have woke up at 3 p.m. Like it would have just, I was out. It was one of those, you basically go to bed. Feel like I just blinked and I woke up and it was time to go on to the next day.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I think for us, like at the show on Friday, it was just more about kind of meeting people and connecting. It was, the crowd was good. You could still move around, but what I really want to, and we're going to kind of cover topics like, what do we think the health of the hobby looks like after the show? Because these experiences and events are, I think, a measuring stick to some degree. But what blew me away was yesterday, and I'm probably skipping ahead a little bit, but how many people were at this show? And
Yep.
and so if you had any inkling as to, because we know prices have been down a little bit, and if you look at the hobby from different angles, there's plenty of things to maybe be worried about or concerned about, but it would be really hard to argue that the hobby is dead if you were at the Toronto Sport Card Expo yesterday with how many people. Did that surprise you, Neil? How many people were at the show?
Yeah, it was basically like packed. It was like a any you wouldn't know it, like exactly what you said. You wouldn't know that the market is down. And usually during the off season the market's down, but maybe people looked at it as this is buying season. If the market's down, now's also a good opportunity to stay with it and have an opportunity to get some of those cards that maybe were so far out of reach down, in the past. I mean, maybe we're still coming off the back end of the giant COVID wave of that, the boom. So, maybe things are just correcting themselves. So, yeah, I look at it as prices might be down, but it doesn't mean the interest level's down. My interest level's at an all-time high. So I look at it that way for myself. But the cards are the cards, and they're the stars of the show to me. And so it was packed though. It was really really a lot of people. It also helps because there were so many more autographs, the auto photo sessions that were there.
Yeah.
Most of them were Saturday. I think that added to it because some of those people might be the ones that are just coming into the show for those and maybe not there for anything else. Um, when you have people like Ric Flair and Mike Tyson there, that's a big draw.
Yeah.
So I think that added more. Plus, the people are off from work, so there was definitely a noticeable difference in number of people at the show on Saturday.
Well, Troy gets anxiety on the notion of missing his flight to get to the airport early. I get no more anxiety than about parking at the Toronto Sport Card Expo on Saturday, because holy cow, is that an adventure? And we wanted to give Troy a few minutes to sleep a little. We're trying to be empathetic, Troy, to the fact that you slept. I think you said like
To
40 hours.
my plight of not sleeping.
Yeah, so we tried to give you to the last minute, and to your credit again, man, you did not need hours to get going. You popped out of bed, got in the shower, and we were ready to
Yep.
roll within a few minutes. But I think we got to the expo. It opened at 10 yesterday, maybe around 10:30, and if it's hard to know exactly, but I would bet that if we got there 20 minutes later, that the parking lot would have been full. And this is not a
Yeah.
small facility. There were just cars just piling in. And like on Saturday in the first year, Troy, it's kind of funny. We almost parked in the exact same spot. We've had to park so far at the end of this parking lot that in all reality, I'm never good at gauging this, guys. Was it a 15-minute walk? Does that sound
Yeah,
fair? Or
10, maybe 10 to
um,
10 at the most, 15 if we're dodging cars.
So go early on pro tip. Go early if you're going on Saturday to the Sport Card Expo. Another thing that I would encourage people to do, because I didn't have a lot of time this morning, but I saw a number of posts. I think if you go on to the Sport Card Expo on their Instagram, or I think Coach Co had even shared some of these. There's a little kind of upstairs level and a little balcony overlook that people often use, and there were pictures that had been taken from just the crowd and how packed the show floor was yesterday, and it is kind of mind blowing how many people were at this show. The other thing that I think will always stand out to me is, so there's a main hall that has probably the lion's share of like the cards and companies, and then there's a long corridor there's two other halls that encompass the show, and all throughout the corridor they have vendors on both sides that are set up with both cards or other types of memorabilia. This is where we've seen like the furniture makers in the past and stuff like that. And at some point, must have been around midday I'm guessing, like Neil, like you said, when you had the Ric Flair or signees, or Tyson was there, or some of the bigger named Brett Hull kind of type deal. Troy and I were trying to get to that hall, that area, and it was almost totally impassable. Like because we hadn't been to that hall yet, and we wanted to go check it out yesterday, and we got into that corridor, and it was crazy. We didn't even go because I literally don't think we got. And I'm not an expert on Canadian fire code, but I can't imagine that.
Well, I remember taking that turn and looking, and I'm just like, you have to be kidding me. This looks ridiculous. And then we're like debating, do you think we could move if we get in there? And we kind of step there and we look, and I'm like, I don't think it's moving. You're like, I don't think it's moving. I'm like, well, let's go just hang out in that conference room or something, and we'll just kind of we'll watch the traffic and see what happens. Yeah, so then we just go into this conference room, hang out for a little bit. I don't know who must have been signing. Was it Flair and Tyson and all the big guys? I don't really know what was going on, but it was insane. So, and we kind of talked about this, and you might bring it up later, but the show gets much bigger. That connector hallway is going to be a bottleneck or an issue. So I don't know what has to happen in the future, if it's a new facility or you try to get a bigger hall or different halls or what. But it was only for like, I'm guessing an hour that hallway was really bad, because after sitting in the conference room for a little bit, we had a fan or listener come over and was talking to us, and then we asked him when he came over what it was like. He said, "Oh, it's a little bit better now." So it was very interesting, though.
Yeah, I was in that same hallway, but because we would split off on our paths throughout the day and catch up with each other. I was in that hallway at the same time, just in a different spot, and I remember thinking to myself, because right before we heard them say about people going for the Ric Flair signings, and that's when the whole convention, just everybody gave a big loud woo when they said his name. But I remember, like, I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, you know what? I don't have to be here in this hallway. This is for other people to go. So I just I'm going to go back in the main hall. There was plenty to look at still in there. So I just kind of bailed out and let everybody who needed to go down there be in that hallway and get down to for their autograph session. And that's when, I went back into the main hall, and there was, like, again, I said, still plenty to be in there. So I think if you use a little bit of sound judgment and just be like, well, as much as I want to go down there, I'll get there later. So people just kind of shift and go around, and you can help make life easier for everybody.
Yeah, so I'm very confident in saying the hobby isn't dying, and there's plenty of interest in cards and the hobby. I want to kind of get your guys' perspective a little bit on prices and where that whole aspect of the hobby is at. And I always try, and I did a little bit this weekend, to ask vendors how the show's going. Are you selling a lot? Are you getting the values that you're hoping to out of your cards? And I think that in general, the feedback that I got was really positive from the vendor side, that cards were moving, whether it was in trades or just people buying from them, and that there was, I don't know if it'll be if it's the most deals maybe that they've ever done, but I didn't run into any vendors that were disappointed, and so we'll probably hear more and more about that from specific people as we get into next week, and maybe we'll get some more feedback ourselves. But I want to get both of your guys, now from the consumer side and the hobbyist side, um, what were your thoughts just on prices, and did you feel like the prices were fair, that the so a lot of vendors might have been overpriced, or were people willing to negotiate? And maybe we'll start with you, Neil, kind of what your sense of that whole aspect of the show was.
Yeah, I think prices were fair. Like every show, I think they're stickered a little north usually to start off with, but every single vendor that I talked to was always willing to negotiate. And you put that due diligence on yourself to see what are you comfortable with, and you talk to them, you have a conversation, and every single thing that I purchased was under sticker price. Every single thing that I purchased, and I think I learned a long time ago. Um, you're not paying sticker price for a card unless it's maybe in the dollar box or 50-cent box. But every vendor was loved talking to you. You know, you'd ask how their day's going, prices come down, you have an open, candid conversation, and you just look up your information on what comps might be. Um, I'm the type of person where I kind of will step away to the side. I don't want to take up real estate in front of a vendor's table, standing there looking at my phone, looking at price information, but I'll know what the price is and what they're asking. And if I come back, I have to come back with a good reason. But I think they were all willing to negotiate. Um, Nothing was crazy that I saw.
The worst someone's going to say is no. And so if there's
Yeah.
and I heard a lot of that people too, and people are getting pretty sizable discounts. So without, yeah, some people don't love some people love negotiation. Other people don't like kind of that sort of maybe the tenseness of it or the adversarial aspect of going back and forth with someone. But one of the things that's really stood out to me is I heard a lot of people when they're recounting picking up a card or something like that, maybe the card was marked at $400 and they said, "Would you take 300?" And the dealer said, "Sure." So it didn't seem like that there was like a crazy amount of insane negotiations, and so I think that that's a good reminder is be reasonable, be fair. Like you said, Neil, I think it's an awesome tip to not stand right in front of somebody's cases staring at your phone for 12 minutes while you're trying to figure out what you want to value that card at. Step away, but come back with your reasons and just ask. And if they say no, then you move on. When you're at a place like the Toronto Sport Card Expo, there's no shortage of cool cards to buy. So you don't have to maybe necessarily hone in. I guess in most cases on that just one card. I don't know about you, Troy. What did you think of kind of the prices? And I'm sure you'll get into the wax kind
Yeah.
of stuff that we saw.
Well, I agree with Neil. Stickers were always high, but you got to remember it's a show. They're stickering what they would love to get in an ideal world, and you use that as a starting point and do your research. They'll come down usually. I think it was very rarely when I heard someone not moving on anything, but so that's what I saw for the individual stuff. But yeah, like you said, Josh, wax was another story, which was this is kind of what we thought coming in. You start looking around at this wax, and we felt it was going to get cheap, especially for U.S. dollar buyers or U.S. people that dollar's very strong. And we saw, what did we see? Allure at most places. The new release was around, it'd be 150 at a table, 125, and then we found the table that had it for $100, which is 70-ish US or 77 or something like that US. So I think we all bought boxes there. I know me and Josh did for sure, a couple boxes. And then and that table, the guy that we found that was across from Jeremy Lee, and he had actually really good prices on wax. I think he had extended for really cheap, and I think he sold out of it, if I remember right, or he had to go get more or something. But yeah, you saw the prices on wax were definitely, you had to look for the right table, but you could find really good deals.
100%. You got to shop for wax at the expo.
Yeah.
Probably any card show.
Yeah.
But there was huge differences in prices in wax. And I think the 2022-23 Allure is probably the perfect example where there's many tables where it was $150 and then we bought it at 100. That's a third difference,
Yeah.
right? In the price of the box.
And we're speaking
And
Canadian dollars is what we're talking about, the pricing. And so
good point. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually want to get into that. And I want to get Neil's perspective on this too, as a first timer, that we're in Canada, of course, and they don't have the same currency we do. I don't know if this is breaking news to anybody. And so I think as an American, that does add a little extra element to the show and trying to do the now most people probably from all other countries are like, yeah, we do this mental gymnastics like constantly with the US dollar. So tough that you guys have to do it for 3 days a year in your life. A big deal. But did you find that kind of added that sort of maybe extra layer of complication a little bit, Neil, to when you're trying to like figure out like what you want to offer on a card or negotiate or even the process of paying gets a little weird when you're trying to settle on what that conversion rate should be, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, coming in first of all, hearing all the the conversion, and but I have an app. It's one of the currency converter apps, and it's one that will update the percentages, the exchange rate every few hours as it changes live. So, and it's pretty simple. You can put the two countries in, and you can switch it back and forth, which is nice. I mean, it was super handy for me, being able to have switch American and Canadian back and forth to each other and change the values. So I had to practice that first. Um, a lot of the people were more experienced, particularly the dealers, were using a calculator. They would have the rate. Um, so I think I probably had more. So coming into the show, I thought, oh, real simple, real easy. The dollar is going to be very strong. Everybody will be very welcoming to it. First, I had to make sure I asked before I made any purchases. I said, "Do you accept U.S. dollar?" And I actually had more. Maybe it was the type of vendor I was dealing with, but more people say, "Well, yeah," a little hesitancy, but they would. I don't know if that was gamesmanship. I don't know if that was genuine. They might have an issue changing, um, but it did add a little layer of degree of difficulty because what I saw on my phone with the conversion for where I would be at talking to them, um, sometimes they came in back a little higher. And so with one dealer in particular, when I was getting another card, he was still back up like $100 above, and it just wasn't working. And I said, "Hang on a second, can we discuss this a little more in detail? Because I think your math is off." So I heard from others that they kind of get hit a little in the exchange, meaning maybe there's bank fees that they get when they go to exchange it at their banks here in Canada. Maybe there's a fee involved, so they're getting even less. So I don't experience that aspect of it. So I think for myself, maybe next time I might exchange more money to make things take away that um, either gamesmanship or just that, hey, I'm coming to their country. I probably should be a little more willing to use their currency, and then I'll take on the exchange rates or eliminate that. So that way, I'm looking at stickers, and I'm just um, dealing in that one currency, and we're talking the same language without having to convert it.
I'm really on board with you on that, and am going to definitely do that myself. And I know Troy will actually, and you can talk in a minute, kind of your process, Troy, for any other Americans that are going to the show, because I think you've kind of figured it out how to do it in a way where you lose the least amount of money in fees and kind of doing that convert currency exchange. But and I know when we had Mike D. Singer on, who helps run the expo and organizes it, and he did a fantastic job, by the way. So great job, Mikey, this year with the show. That he was very adamant that you don't have to have Canadian dollars, and that's very true. You can use American dollars, but I think in the case I observed with you and in my own dealings too, it adds a little layer of complexity that and you have cases where sometimes it isn't free to exchange currency, and so I think it's important to acknowledge that. I think other dealers might use that to their advantage to try to squeeze a couple extra bucks out of you along the way too. And I think once it maybe adds a step in preparation and coming to the show, and maybe an extra trip to your bank to get that exchange. But I think once you're here, it's probably well worth. And in the midst of a deal, you'll be happy that you have Canadian dollars. Do you agree with that, Troy?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I always bring a lot of Canadian. I don't want to do the math at the table. And I've found too, if you go to your bank, you usually get the best rate. And I think I said this on our prep show. It's like you might have to contact your bank 72 hours before to order or set up your foreign currency, depending on how big they are. I mean, I go to one of the biggest ones in the US and they still want 72 hours. Now, they say that I had the currency was there the next day. I think they just do that to save their butts in case something happens. But you'll always usually get the best exchange rate from your bank, not the airport currency conversion stand. Don't use those places. And I was really happy with the conversion when I did my switch. So still have a pretty good chunk of change left when I go to the show today on Sunday, which when people are listening to this will be Monday. So yesterday, I'm still going to the show again today. So we'll see if I can spend any more. But yeah, currency is always fun.
Do you have any idea like what the currency exchange rate you got? I have no clue like what a good or average exchange rate is as far as like
I
the fee
want to
you
say it was
pay
like
in
a
order to exchange your money.
yeah. Oh, I looked it up. Let me look up real quick what it is. I
I think it
think
was
I got one. I was it $1.30 maybe.
hmm.
I think so each. Yeah, because yeah, it was like $1 equals $1.38 Canadian or something like that, or $1.35. I'm looking at what it is today, and there's a fee. Obviously, they're going to take out. So I think it was like $1.35 or $1.32 or something there. It was pretty good. It was actually really good.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit and kind of get a little more into the people aspect, which, like I started, to me is becoming more and more just source of enjoyment for me in the hobby. And I want to go back to Neil. So we spend a lot of our most of our time on this hobby really on social media. It's kind of become a big part of the whole collecting experience, and you get to know these personalities, through their social accounts or videos that they do. And some people are just more on just kind of collectors showing off their collections, to other people that are more influencers or content creators in the hobby. And I just want to get your perspective, Neil, on what it was like to actually put a face and to see in person so many of these people that kind of in your worldview have only existed through your phone to this point.
Yeah, that was I think the um, very close runner reason for wanting to come to this event was to meet the people. Cards were primary, but it wasn't just about that. I wanted to meet the people that I knew of. I'm, meeting you guys. We talked about this for a few weeks, a few months actually. Geez, about setting this up. So that, and then so many other people, not just the social media people too, but the people, the attendees. I mean, everybody was so nice to I'm walking in and I just happened to have a Flyer shirt on, and some guy stopped me and told me how great he loved Bobby Brink, and he wanted to show me his Bobby Brink cards, and he asked me who I liked, and it was just totally random. um, so it was just multiple moments like that, but meeting the people that you established little relationships with, liking videos. I mean, I don't know if I can go through with a bunch of them, but so many names and so many people's, and hanging out after the show for dinner um, added such that it probably exceeded my expectations, because I came up here technically solo. Nobody was here with me. I came up here by myself, and I'm leaving here with so many more close friends. Um, it's really been the biggest um, bright spot for me for this experience.
Well, Troy, for us, the it gets more the people aspect gets to be more and more important part of this experience now that we've come our third time. We have this challenge, which we'll talk about, that I totally roped you into on the fly on the show, and I know you're super excited about. Uh, and where we have to find a card for $100 or less, and we're going to let everyone vote who got the best card in the show. But that's given me that's a little bit of focus to try to find this card, and I found yesterday in a beautiful and amazing way. I don't I was there for 6 hours, and I don't think I looked at a single card because we were just meeting people and talking with
Yeah.
people we've known from the past, or meeting new listeners of the show. And it was incredible. And that's part of why my voice is so strained today.
Yeah.
Definitely, I remember we finally connected with our good friend Seth yesterday, the hockey card pack mule, who somehow carries around 6,000 pounds of cards with him for hours and hours at every show. And he's the most amazing person. And he was the first person last year that had, I think, ever come up to us
Yep.
ever and said that he listened to our show. And so he'll always have a special spot in our heart from that perspective. But it was, if you look at our progression from the twice being at the show last year to now, this is our third time. It was crazy how many people we met yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was insane. I was trying to think about it, and it was like tenfold, maybe 20, 30-fold than previous shows. And it was getting to the point where I think I was getting names mixed up in my head, who was who, because I mean, it was so many people, but it was awesome just putting faces to names, and then people I've done trades with on Discord in our server, and it was amazing meeting these people, and there were so many. It was awesome. And it's like we said this too. There's so many good people in this hobby. Like everyone was awesome. Like, I didn't have one bad interaction at all. It was even just with random show people that ended up talking to. Nothing. I had no bad interactions. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. And so thank you to everyone that came up and introduced yourself. It to just to get to talk to you, to when we hear stuff that you actually like this show, it's you have no idea how meaningful that is to us, and how it makes the work we put into it worth it. And um, your kindness is really, it makes the difference for people like us, and it makes, and so I guess in all aspects it's a good reminder to me to go out of my way more often to share with people that that I think, whether it's work hard or do something that I like, and just to tell them how much I appreciate what they do, because we've seen firsthand how
Yeah.
meaningful that is to us. And you mentioned, I got to start like kind of like with some of like the Discord crew. We met a number of people. I know your name is David, but I kind of want to call you California Dave, who's the Kings fan in our Discord. We got to hang out with David a little bit, and it was great to get to meet him. And there's just so many people. It's like I kind of like you, Neil. I'm fearful to go down the road because I don't want to leave out anyone that we got to meet. But I think
Well, and also
beyond the card,
kids. Like we met a lot of kids that listened to us. That was crazy too.
yeah, that's wild. That blows my mind. That, and wives, we met wives that I don't think like turn our show on, but maybe happen to be in the car when our show is played. And to me, I got to say this too. What I find a lot of joy, personal joy and satisfaction is when we hear stuff, and I know Troy, you heard this a lot too. Like people will say, like, "Oh, we live in maybe like New York, and we have a 45-minute drive or an hour and a half drive to hockey practice, and we use your show to maybe fill that time." And just to know that, because hey, we've had drives before too, and it's not fun to do your repetitive hour drive. And if there's something that this show can do to maybe make that time a little bit more enjoyable, or and then of course to help people kind of maximize their goals and their hobby or collecting experience, then that whole thing is just super rewarding. And so um, yeah, just thank you. We probably don't say this enough, but we really appreciate everybody's support, and uh, the fact that the expo provides an opportunity for so many people to get together to uh, and to come up and meet us is really cool. And the other thing too, Troy, that and we've talked about this personally a lot in the past, that I'll never get over is how nice Canadians are. I mean, hockey card is like Canada's things, hockey cards. So
Yeah.
for a couple of dopey Americans to have the show and to try to talk about them and have a voice in the hobby, just how accepted we've been in Canada, I still don't understand that. We still can't pronounce a single French name right, and we never
Yeah.
will. So sorry in that regard, but yeah, it's like again, I just can't believe how nice Canadians are to us as well.
Oh no, it's fantastic. They're wonderful people. Again, we met too many people to list. And again, everyone was very complimentary. Again, the kids thing blows my mind. I think the one where they said when their son goes to bed or kids go to bed, they put the show on. And that was just like, and then we said, is that good or bad? Are we so boring we're putting them to sleep? Or is it just one of those good things you put on your favorite show at night and you fall asleep? But yeah, again, thank you to all the Canadians and our American listeners and to everyone we met. It was absolutely fantastic.
There are two more people though that or three that I want to give a special shout out for that we end up hanging out with quite a bit and typically have. So another French name, and God, I like this guy so much. And so it's not just hockey players we mispronounce. Like um, it's Sylvain, who you know I think is a French pronunciation, but I'll call Sylvain all the time, which is awful and it's mortifying. But he is from New Brunswick, I believe, so in the eastern part of Canada, right? Here I'm showing my horrible geography skills. Is a vendor was set up at the Slab Sharks booth. Slab Sharks booth was amazing. Holy cow! Did they? You can tell how much their presence is growing.
Yeah.
They went all out and had a fantastic booth at the show. And you know, we went out to dinner and he was very kind, and because a big part of us is what we try to do is learn more and understand different aspects of the hobby. And he's been working as a more on the vendor side, so kind of buying cards and reselling them, setting up at a lot of shows. And he really walked me through that whole experience and kind of what it's been like and how he got started and how he finds cards. And so and I just find that stuff really interesting personally, as to kind of what how people approach the hobby differently from both the collecting and then maybe a business perspective too. And he's just a fantastic person, and so I've enjoyed getting to meet him better. And then there's the tour de force that is the loud collector and Phil. And I'll let you both comment on Phil. And he brought his son Cole to the show. It's
Yeah.
awesome to meet him, and Phil got to meet my son last spring. And Cole is a fantastic young man. If Cole knows more about NHL than probably any person on earth, and so he
Yep.
was like, we need to hire that kid Troy to as a research assistant. 'Cause we
Yeah.
wouldn't
You're
have to do
kidding.
research. We would just say, uh, Cole, how many goals does McDavid have? And he would be Johnny on the spot. So there might be a horribly paying career opportunity for you in your near future. Keep that in mind. But I was thinking about Phil this morning, and he does videos, and they're really amazing. They're on YouTube. It's under his account, The Loud Collector.
Loud
And
collector. Yep.
yeah, I think what he has the most positive energy that I've seen, and he's just infectious. That's the word that I think
Yep.
is that you're just happy being around him, and he's very kind. He's very outgoing. He's incredibly funny, and been feel very blessed to have the opportunity to kind of get to know him a little bit these last few shows and hang out. But we'll start with you, Neil, and then one with Troy. Um, Tell me about your Phil experience and the tour de force that is Phil.
Yes, the tour de force is definitely the proper terminology for Phil. So we've chatted on Instagram and on the Discord before. I've watched his videos on his YouTube channel, so I've come to understand him and his demeanor. And I was walking down this one aisle, and I heard him before I saw him, and he was just behind me over my shoulder, and I literally turned around and I said, "I hear Phil the Loud Collector." And he turned around like, "Oh," and he was just so welcoming right from the gate. I told him who I was, and he was like, his eyes got even bigger, and it was like a big handshake and a hug. And meeting him and talking to him, it is as advertised. He's such a great person, so genuine. Um, and Cole, oh my gosh, what a great kid. I mean, he was so fun to talk to. I have two kids. My daughter's 18, my son's 15, on the verge of 16, and they've got varying degrees of friends that, some are shy, talking to an adult, some are, you know, outgoing as well. Cole, what a great kid. I mean, he would talk to you, he was asking questions. I saw him a few times during the show and, fist bump him, ask him how he's making out when he's getting to go on his own. So um, meeting Phil and Cole, such a great experience. And Sylvain, oh my goodness. Oh my God. Like I didn't know him before the show, other than him in a couple of Phil's videos. Such a genuine, great guy to get to talk to, his understanding his experiences. Um, so great to talk to them both for a couple nights. One other person too to mention was Nonstop Dave. We
Oh,
talked to him.
Dave.
Yeah,
He's
Nonstop
awesome.
Dave. Talked to him the first couple nights, and then collecting and stopping by his table, right? And then he had such a slick move when you went up to say hello. I was kind of behind you. Remember that? I
Yeah.
was off to your shoulder, and he kind of knew who I was, I guess, from seeing me, kind of. And he was talking to you, and meanwhile, he just grabs a Flyers card and he slides it onto the table. Such a great move. Such a great move. Know your audience. But
Well, he took a plunge this
yeah,
year, and he's from local. I think he's from the Brampton area. He's a very nice guy. Well, I think him and Seth were probably the first two people we met, and I
Yeah.
always really
Yep.
enjoy seeing Dave and talking to him. And he actually set up as a dealer for the first time
Yep.
at the show. And he was telling me yesterday that it was an awesome experience for him. So I'm really happy about that. But we never got to Troy. Anything you want to share about our guy Phil, the loud collector?
No, Phil's great. I mean, we've got to know him very well. He's got awesome videos. I love to watch. His cat, Mr. Bigglesworth, cracks me up every time. It makes me want to bring my dogs onto the show and have them sit in my lap. Like, do something with the dogs, but I won't because they'll just start howling or barking the whole time. But no, Phil, Sylvain, awesome people. So glad to have met them in this hobby. Hang out with them again for the second year in a row. There's so many more names, and I'm gonna forget people. So I don't even want to go down that route, and I feel horrible that I don't remember. I'm so bad remembering names. I'm good with remembering faces, like, oh, I've seen you, like you introduced yourself. But I'm so bad with names. But again, like we said, thank you to everyone that stopped us, talked to us, told us some anecdote about our show. It was so fantastic. I will ride this high for a long time.
Yeah, there are. In addition to, we do need to mention about Phil. He gave us all T-shirts, so that his kind of with his brand, and so thank you to Phil for that. And then one other person who did give us a T-shirt is uh, it's Struggle Bus wearing it right now. There we go. There we go. I love the shirt, and so it's a Jay from Top Shelf Cookie Sniper podcast.
Yeah.
Uh, listen to his show, please. He's a great person. He came up from I think the Boston area. I know he's a Bruins fan, so sorry Jay if I misspoke there. But like you said, and if we did miss you, it's believe me, we're exhausted. We can barely talk, and we'll find a way to kind of connect with you and say thanks. And then there's another person I don't want to mention by name, but I just want because I know he's listening just to acknowledge. I think I get the sense he's more private. You know who I'm talking about, Troy?
I think so.
Our good friend, who is a big vintage collector. So you know who you are, and you'll have to let us know if you're okay with us mentioning your name. But he's been a huge supporter of us. He's been the
Yes.
kindest, nicest person, and I honestly want to run to where he's at every expo to say hi because that's one of the highlights for me of the trip. And then we have a plan to kind of do something hockey card related together next time. So thank you guys for indulging and letting me give that.
Yeah,
I just
and just I was gonna say to that point, he gave us a fantastic copy of a book to read,
yes.
a
So
history of cards, that Bobby Burrell book. It was, and I
thank you.
can't wait to read it.
Thank you for that. Well, now I also need to mention too, and a special thank you to Mikey Singer, who his company does kind of facilitate the show and organize it. Mikey gave us, but kind of me, because your travel plans in limbo, the opportunity again to kind of be part of the content panels at the show and to do a couple of speaking events. And so had the opportunity along with Jeremy Lee and Coach Co on Thursday night when Troy was taking it one step further to a state title with the Minnetonka Skippers in game one and their 8-0 victory there, to just talk about kind of the hobby and kind of what we're seeing and maybe what the Connor Bedard effect will be. They had a really, I really liked how they changed the main stage this year and kind of went from that table and bar stools to more just couchy chairs, which were very comfortable. And so had the opportunity to do that. And then on Friday, there was a content creators panel where, again, with Coach Co and Jeremy, but Troy from the Castro from David Adams, the Chase, who's a super nice guy. I think Kyle Kravitz is his name. He's the king of cards, big TikTok and Instagram influencer, and then Jay from Mojo Breaks, and to talk specifically about sort of different aspects and what it's like to be a content producer in this hobby. So it's crazy, Troy, that we're even kind of in that group of people to this point. Number one, but to me, that one was really interesting just to see how everyone's maybe approach is different to how they go about it and sort of the different ways, the unique ways that we all utilize within our personalities to, try to promote the hobby through our content.
Yeah, I'll say this too. It was really interesting on that panel because I actually was in the crowd watching it, so I got the watchers view, and I don't know if it's still online or how if those are archived anywhere or anything. But it was really interesting for me to see different angles from different like Jeremy said, he's an interview show. We're more a podcast, analytical, research based. And then you have breaks, like people up there that do breaks or do maybe almost man on the street segments where they're running around. It was really interesting to hear those different kind of views. And then my favorite part was the question on kind of your early stuff and how bad it was and how you decided to keep going. And that was pretty funny to hear some of that stuff. But it was a great panel. It was great to listen to from the audience as well.
Yeah, and one of the big takeaways for me that I was really happy to see is just, and we felt this when we were starting too, especially from a guy like Jeremy Lee, who didn't see us as a threat, even though we're not, of course, but was just so supportive of us and just that you know I think we all hope that more and more people produce content because the more that people share their kind of stories and experiences within the hobby, the more people that will reach, and the more maybe potential new collectors that will reach, and that really, I'm not trying to be like pat ourselves on the back here, but I think that it is an important component of the growth of the hobby. And like you said, Troy, you had people that more use more documentarian style, which is definitely not us. Like that have camera crews that follow them around and sort of their hobby experience, to Jeremy, who's kind of the king of the hobby interviews, to and if you guys haven't watched The Chase, it's a really good, just general kind of hobby show. They cover a little bit of hockey, but it's more kind of because David Adams sells sports cards from all different sports and Magic and all that stuff too. But I just thought it was really uh, beneficial to even be a part of that, and so hopefully everyone enjoyed that, and we're grateful to have had the opportunity. Um, I don't know, what am I forgetting, guys? What else do we want to kind of bring up about the show that kind of really stood out to you, or that you think is important for people to know about?
Well, I think that the notion that this is a hockey card only show isn't necessarily true. There was a lot of other items here, but hockey is definitely the primary, the star of the show, so to speak. But there were so many things, other things, vintage pop culture, obviously baseball, football, basketball. I don't, yeah, those were there. Other sports as well, wrestling. So there's plenty there of other things, but you might just have, if you're into those things and you want to come to the Sports Card Expo, I think that they're still worth coming. You just might know what it's like for us hockey collectors at any other show. You might get through the floor a little bit quicker.
Yeah, it's like a
But
reverse thing of every other show when you come to this
yeah,
one.
yeah. So I think that there's plenty of that stuff, but there's also other vendors that have other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, memorabilia, jerseys. I think the Maple Leafs had a Toronto Maple Leafs had a section in the one back corner along the back wall where they're selling tons of things there. Picture frames, like you can get cool stuff for your cards. I got that slab frame with from the
Yep.
Gretzky card. I got that. Those were really, really cool. Um, so plenty of stuff there, and I can't echo it more than what you guys too said. Was just the hobby is the people. Like that's another gentleman, John Newman, from Sports Card Nation. That's what his tagline is. That is so 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 true, and I think that you guys are seeing it a little bit more now. Now with you having your YouTube channel, more people are recognizing you because they're seeing you on YouTube, so they might catch you, and that's why they're introducing themselves. So I mean, because you were both dressed as almost nondescript as you could yesterday outside of your branded hats. So it might be people will see you and recognize you going forward much more. You don't need to be emblazoned with hockey cards, gong show stuff. So you're seeing a little bit more of that. But I think that the show itself was fantastic for me. I think the one point I mentioned to you that I wanted to say was if you're ever on the fence about this show, if you don't think you're a big enough hockey card collector to come to it, you're like, well, maybe that's for everybody else. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really. If you're a hockey card collector and you love hockey cards, I think you need to owe it to yourself to come to experience this show. Because I kind of felt that way initially about myself that, well, I'm not really that big. I don't. It's not. Doesn't. It's not a big effort. I don't deserve to be there. I'm not a big content creator. I'm not going for crazy, crazy cards. But if it's I think you just owe it to yourself to come to experience this show and just dive into this hobby because it's hobby changing for me. So I enjoyed it. It exceeded every expectation.
Yeah, I'll say it. We've covered most of it. I'm just excited to see the show, how it grows, if it's going to keep getting bigger, what's going to happen with venues and square footage and attendees. Because I think this was the largest by far. Jeremy, like you said, had the largest turnout even at his little dinner that he puts on. So that's crazy. I also want to say, too, I think we might have missed this last time, but Marcel Dion has a booth. And I thought that was just wild. And he's just
Yes.
hanging out there and he was very friendly, personable, talking to anyone, had a lot of memorabilia for sale that was very reasonably priced from my viewpoint. Very reasonably priced for what do we think? Number 6 or 7 all-time point leader or goal scorer. I can't remember. 6.
Both.
It was absolutely amazing and seeing him set up there. And I feel like he's been there before. I feel like someone said he sets up there every time, and we just totally whiffed on it last time because it's a small booth. It's indiscreet. It's on the second row. If you're not looking for it, you might miss it. But I thought that was really fantastic as well.
My mind is still blown over this whole. Yeah, somebody said he's there every time. I'm like, what? The guy's 732 goals. 700 goals in the NHL, and he just sits there at his booth. And then I went on a mission. It's like, yeah, sure enough, there's literally, and you go to a trade show, and not that we're super young, but yeah, it's a bunch of old guys sitting at tables. So I think you just walk by and you just assume, well, it's just a kind of another old guy selling off memorabilia. No, it's Marcel Dion who is just sitting there, and you got to chime in because once we found this out, Neil, you went the extra step and you actually introduced yourself to him and actually got to have a little conversation with again a guy who has 700 goals in the NHL.
Yeah, I wanted to find where he was at to see if it was folklore, if it was true, and I walked down the aisle and sure enough, he's there with his little, he has his banner with his name and his, the teams on it. And as I was walking by, it didn't start out that way as an introduction. I wanted to see him say hello, and afternoon, Mr. Dion, and going about my day. And he just looked at me, he goes, when he waved, he said, hey, and he goes, hey. what's going on with the Oilers? Like, because they just lost to the Ducks the night before. No, Sharks. They
Sharks,
just
San
lost to the
Jose.
Sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just lost to the Sharks, and it was just to me like I'm like, um, yeah, I don't know, and we just started a conversation, and I was like, yeah, they lost to the Sharks, but so did my Flyers the night before, and oh, you're a Flyers fan. Oh, I should have known that. And we started talking about who do you collect or who do you like, and the topic went from my favorite player Couturier to we talked about Lindros and his brother, and he talked about his experiences with going and watching them, and so it was really cool. It was a good solid 10-15 minutes of just literally talking to the sixth highest goal scorer in NHL history, the sixth most points in NHL history. And the whole time I was thinking in my back of my mind, I was sitting there, I was like, should I ask him a picture? And I'm like, no, I don't want to ruin that moment. I don't like I'm sure he would have, but I knew he was there for a purpose. Um, I knew people were purchasing tickets for autograph sessions with him and photographs, and I was like, you know what? I don't. I just now I have this little nugget, this little moment for myself. It was really really cool, and yeah, it was so unassuming. It was. I think that's probably the first most surprising table that I saw, which was only behind the pepperoni vendor that's that's there every year, which just I don't know, but yeah, Marcel Dion is sitting at the Sports Card Expo. That's crazy and very cool.
He had a lot of cool stuff at his booth too that was very reasonably priced as well. So if you're a Marcel Dion fan, definitely go and meet him and I guess buy some of his memorabilia again.
And
Really
talk to him,
cool.
pick his brain, talk to him and get the experience. He was so he'll tell you stories for days if you really want to stop and take the time.
Okay, Neil. So I kind of want to end with you. And first of all, I got to ask, are you coming back? Do you see yourself returning to the Sport Card Expo? Because it is a commitment to come up here, and so is
It
it worth
is.
it? And are you coming back?
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. Um, I think I might shift. I wanted to experience the fall version. So I might shift when I go because it will definitely make more sense in my life without having kids, youth sports and hockey. I coach hockey as well, and my son plays. So it will fit more in my life if I change or come to the spring one. So that might be the only adjustment I make. But yeah, I can see myself coming, once a year for sure. I might not hit the next spring, but we'll see. But this is so worth the experience. So
It's
worth it.
gonna
Just the people.
it's gonna be Connor Bedard Mania in spring. So that's what I'm most looking forward to seeing. What happens, and I think it's going to depend a little bit on, of course, how he plays, and he's been doing pretty well so far. But this next one could just be nuts, huh, Troy?
Yeah, it is going to be insane, especially you're talking about the hype, and then you had your. I know you guys talked about Bedard a little bit on your Thursday panel, but then he had the 4 point game, and it seems like now the Hawks all just riled up again. The NHL PR accounts going crazy on finding any little stat it can. He's on Bedard, and if he keeps playing like he is now, keeps producing regular points, it's going to be a banana. It's just going to be chaos when that stuff comes out.
One thing I want to add to that, it's going back a little bit, I think, to Neil, to your comments on just that, about kind of the show and the experience. I think for every level of collector, one of the reasons why I want to do this $100 challenge, Troy, that I know you're really excited about, is I think that because I got mine and I think it's a really cool card. You, and I think this is an important point to make. You don't have to have $20,000 in cash to spend to enjoy the show. There's cards at every level. We got to meet a guy named Justin, another guy, a great guy we got to meet yesterday who listens to the show, who has a 1951 Parker's Gordie Howe PSA 8. And we got to hold that in our hand, which is kind of amazing. I'm not going to lie there. But Neil, you were talking about how you were lost for hours in dollar boxes too. And so you don't have to have a crazy amount of money to spend on cards to, I think, get the same amount enjoyment on the show. And I'll just go back to the point that I made is that I literally could come here and not get a single card and have the best time. It's just about the people. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this special kind of off the cuff episode we love to do just to recap and share our experiences from the show. We'll be back at you on Thursday with our regularly scheduled programming. I guess we'll um, kind of put it that way. Special thanks to you, Neil. I mean, we talked about people we got to meet, and we've been chatting for a long time. You were maybe the very first supporter of our show. I think not just in person, but online. You had reached out to us, and you've been so kind and supportive, and you've helped out and hosting an episode when Troy was unable to do it, and so it's been really great to, I kind of already felt like we were friends before this, and but just to be able to hang out with you for a weekend has been a real treat. And so, again, thank you for coming on the show today and for your friendship. It means a lot to us.
Thank you guys as well. I appreciate it. It's great. Yeah, it's um, what you guys do for the hobby, and for people is great, and it's so natural, and it was funny, like you said, pulling in Thursday, and then you pulled in shortly after a meeting, and I was like, oh, it's funny. The first thing he said, "You're taller than I expected."
Yeah.
So,
There you
but
go.
yeah, it was just like you felt natural. I didn't feel much awkwardness at all. So being able to hang out and catch up with you guys was great. So, but thank you for everything. Yeah, the friendship is definitely something that I cherish. It's part of my hobby experience. So, thank you very very much for both of you. So it's been a fun weekend, and it'll always be with Hockey Cards Gong Show.
Awesome. All right, guys. We'll see you on Thursday, and have a great start to your week.